Hi there, Doc from Barcast Audio here today to talk with you about some of the most important law school lingo to know as you enter law school, as you are thinking about law school. You're going to hear some terms, you're going to not know what they mean, so I want to just break it down big picture before we jump in. This will give you a head start on your law school experience. You'll know what people are talking about. You won't have to ask any sort of embarrassing questions about what the heck people are talking about when they say the curve, when they refer to an attack outline, a regular outline, OCI, any of it. We're going to briefly just talk about some of the most important lingo. So let's jump right into it. All right, let's begin by talking about what's known as the curve. Each law school grades around a certain GPA, meaning a certain percentage of students have to get a certain grade. So a lot of law schools carry a 3.0 curve or a 3.2 curve, meaning that they have an X number of students who have to get in that 3.2, 3.0 area. This is typically publicly available for schools. So if you look up St. John's Law Curve or different law schools' curves, you can typically find that. Now, not all law schools curve their grades the same way. Certain law schools may have a more welcoming grade or curve where it is more forgiving for students, where they're grading students up to a 3.2. Certain law schools may grade students down to a 2.7 curve, and that is going to be an important consideration as you enter law school, as you start applying to schools, because there are a lot of merit-based scholarships that you may receive where you have to keep a certain GPA, let's say a 3.0, and as you're entering this process, you may think to yourself, I have been a 3.5, 4.0 student my entire life, so I should have no problem maintaining a 3.0 GPA. But keep in mind that if you are receiving one of those scholarships and it is a school that grades down, that has a 2.7 curve or 2.85 curve, a lot of students who receive scholarships entering their first year are not going to retain those scholarships. So the curve is actually one of the more important considerations as you enter law school. Keep it in mind as you're going into your first semester. Understand that you may not be able to expect the same level of high grades that you accomplished in undergraduate, in high school, as you're entering law school. Not just because this is a bigger sort of experience, not just because law school is challenging, but also because the school itself has an interest in curving your grade to a certain number. So that is just a big picture understanding of what the curve is. The school has X number of students who need to score in a certain way. You are graded against your peers. They have X number of grades that can be achieved. I had one professor who he typically only gave out 1 or 2 A's a semester, and that was not atypical. That you'll find a lot throughout the law school experience. So the curve is basically what you are graded against as you go through law school. For those of you who don't know, for the most part in law school, your entire grade is based on your final exam. So that final exam is what is typically curved. Some classes are a little bit more difficult with the curve. Bigger classes, lecture hall classes, are a little bit more difficult to score well, whereas some of the smaller lecture classes may be easier to score better on the curve or against the curve. Let's talk now about outlines. What are outlines? I've done a number of videos on this topic. If you continue to follow our Law School 101 series, you'll see more and more of these. Outlines are one of the most important things in all of law school. Outlines essentially are a summary of everything you learn in law school. So maybe in undergraduate, you received a syllabus that broke down every topic you're going to cover class by class. Your outlines in law school are essentially going to be very similar to a syllabus, but in some cases you may use your syllabus to actually serve as the basic skeleton for your outline. But essentially you'll take your syllabus, and throughout the semester you will fill in all the information you've learned in a very coherent, very pointed summary of everything you learned that semester. Cases, laws, everything in between, so that come exam time, that is what is going to be tested on your exam. Hopefully, throughout the semester, your law professor may have pointed to certain topics that are more heavily tested on his exams or her exams, and then you can highlight that within your outline. But your outline is essentially the most important tool you're going to have in law school to scoring well on the bar exam. It is very difficult to really know how to make an outline when you first enter law school. Some students go way too big. They go with these 200-page outlines that include literally every note they've done. I typically don't recommend those. Some students go a little bit lighter. They go too short, too condensed. I think that there is some value somewhere in between. If your outline's over 100 pages, it's typically too long, but they are useful to put together yourself. Some students don't want to do it themselves. They want to just get it from somebody else. I think it's a useful exercise in your first semester, first year of law school, to make your own outlines, at least to begin, just because it's helpful for understanding the scaffolding that is going on here, where you're building upon different pieces of knowledge to understand the law. It's very easy to sort of let the semester go by you and not really, because there aren't no exams throughout the semester typically in law school. So it's easy to sort of let things go by you and not remain checked into where you are, what you've learned so far, and where it all fits together. But your outline is going to be how you ultimately do all of that. Usually there's a mad dash at the end of the semester to get everyone's outlines put together to fill in the blanks amongst your peers. So keep in mind that your outline is going to be the most important thing you're using to study. You're going to base your flashcards, you're going to base your practice exam answers off of that outline. So it pays to have a good one. It pays to pay attention. It pays to pay attention to how you are putting together your outline throughout the semester. Now, another thing I want to talk about is attack outlines. What is an attack outline? So an attack outline goes off the idea we just talked about of outlines themselves, but they're typically a more focused summary that is designed to actively point you in the right direction on a law school exam. So, for example, you may have a particular topic, let's say intentional torts in torts, and an attack outline may be specifically set up to attack a intentional torts essay. So if you see a certain hypo that gives rise to battery, you know exactly this is the rule I have to say. This is the case law that gives rise to that rule. This is 2 or 3 cases that I can use to really show that I understand this rule, that I understand what battery is. Those are what attack outlines are, what they're used for. They're extremely useful. I think one of the most important and powerful tools you have in law school is attack outlines because they set you up very well for your exam answers in a way that just the major big picture outline just doesn't. They are more pointed. They are specifically telling you how to attack an essay, and you can do that. The process of putting together your own attack outline, I think, is essential and will allow you to better prepare yourself for the exam. So keep in mind as you're going through the study process that attack outlines are incredibly useful. We offer them at Barcast Audio with our 1L package. So if you want to check us out at barcastaudio.com, we have all sorts of attack outlines available for you. Next up, OCI. OCI refers to on-campus interviews, which is essentially an on-campus interview process for big law and mid-sized law firms. Your 1L summer. So these typically occur after grades are released for your 1L year, after they've done some journal tryouts, law review sort of tryouts. You go to these on-campus interviews, and those of you who are lucky enough to succeed in these on-campus interviews may be granted an opportunity to work in big law next summer as a 1L associate. A lot of law students go through this process, very stressful process, a lot of interviews, a lot of answering questions, but the end goal of on-campus interviews is typically to get one of those big law, those coveted big law jobs. They are very competitive, they are very challenging, and sometimes some schools have more OCI opportunities than others, so keep in mind, look at some of your employment numbers as you're going into law school so you can understand what to expect going into that process. Next up, let's talk about clerkships. What is a clerkship? A clerkship actually refers to working for a judge for a period, whether it be a summer, whether it be a year after law school. A clerkship is when you work directly for a judge rather than as an attorney directly. A lot of clerkships are really jobs that you get after law school. They are a period where you, instead of going into big law, instead of going into a traditional law firm environment, you go work for a judge, you help write opinions, you help do research for the judge, and you really get to see how the sausage is made within the judicial system from that position of a judge. They are coveted positions. They are very competitive themselves, sometimes more so than the OCI positions at those big law firms. Sometimes you'll see people who are going to work a clerkship in anticipation of trying to wait to pursue a big law role, to pursue a jump to the big law job. I know that many people who I went to law school with may have done a clerkship and then gone to big law and received a bonus for the time that they spent at that clerkship because it is such a prestigious honor to receive that clerkship in many capacities. So some people who go work for federal judges, students who go work for important state court judges, that is viewed as sort of a stepping stone if they want to, again, pursue a judicial career later down the line in their legal careers. So clerkships are, again, working for a judge for any period of time. Sometimes law students, when they work for a law firm, they refer to working as a law clerk for the law firm. That's not necessarily the same thing. That's just sort of an in-between when law students aren't necessarily referring to themselves as summer associates or summer interns. But sometimes law students will refer to their legal internships as legal clerkships as well. Finally, let's talk about blue booking. What is blue booking? Blue booking is what is known as the legal citation system. It is very, very annoying. We could do a whole video about blue booking, but it is essentially what the APA or MLA is for English essays. It is how lawyers cite their cases, cite legal doctrine, cite statutes. It is a complex system that, again, is one you will become more familiar with as you go through your 1L year. Most schools do these legal writing classes where you get experience actually citing cases appropriately, where you score better on your essays for appropriately blue booking. Those who do journals in law school will use this blue booking process to help edit articles for law reviews for certain journals. It is essential to the lawyer experience, to the law school experience, to get a good grip of the blue booking process. So blue booking is very important. It's essentially like APA or MLA. It is the citation process for legal documents, for legal writing. So that does it for us talking about some big picture lingo when it comes to law school, to starting law school. Be sure to check out more of our Law School 101 videos. You can check us out at barcastaudio.com. If you are an incoming 1L, if you are starting law school next year, if you're beginning law school right now, check out our 1L Mastery Program. We have all sorts of documents, attack outlines, audio, case briefs, everything you could possibly need to succeed in law school. We provide it to you. You can break the curve. You have it in you, and we will help you get there. Check us out at barcastaudio.com.